Poverty is a problem. According to The Economist, just about 60% of the entire world lives in poverty. About 1.3 billion people live in extreme poverty, which is defined as living on $1.25 a day. About 2.4 billion people live in moderate poverty, which is defined as living on $2 a day. After extensive research, I've discovered that we are not without a solution to this problem. Nobel Peace Prize winner Muhammad Yunus was the first person to come up with an answer that addresses this issue. It took debut in his home country of Bangladesh. This solution is called microcredit. Despite recent criticisms, Yunus's microcredit is among the world's most innovative ways to reduce poverty. It has improved the lives of many entrepreneurs, and it is based on sound economic principles. But first, what is microcredit? My in-class poll tells me that nobody here was familiar with microcredit and what it meant to reduce poverty in developing nations. So let's take a moment to define it. Courtney Gold of the UCLA Pacific Basin Law Journal tells us that microcredit is the loaning of very small loans to a borrower group, who then decides which of its members will receive that loan. It utilizes peer pressure to ensure that their business is running efficiently and that they are making their payments back to the debtor on time. Muhammad Yunus was the first person to found a micro-lending organization. It was called the Grameen Bank, and it was founded in 1983. This non-governmental organization provided uncollateralized microloans to many groups and poor people in Bangladesh, and it worked. The Grameen Bank today boasts a debt repayment of 97%. The proof of microcredit is in its numbers. According to Kiva, a non-profit organization aimed at reducing poverty, by 2011, Bangladesh expenditures increased by 28%, and personal assets increased by 112%. But get this, in El Salvador, incomes increased by 145%. Microfinance Exchange Incorporated reports that 74 million individuals around the globe held a total of $3.8 billion in microfinance loans. But what's more impressive are the stories. This is Sudha. Sudha is from India. The Grameen Foundation tells us that she reluctantly borrowed 10,000 rupees, or about $225, from the Grameen Bank to buy a buffalo. Within 6 months, she had enough money to not only pay back the loan, the interest, but also to feed her 4 children, send one of her daughters to school, and open a savings account. This is Charity Kulola from Kenya. Charity recently applied for her 3rd loan from the Grameen Bank to diversify her vegetable market. She increased her income enough to send all 7 of her children to formal education. But how about this one? This is Marie Claire Ayurwanda from Rwanda. After being diagnosed with HIV, she took out a loan for just $40. She opened up a restaurant. She also bought a cell phone, which she charges a couple of the villagers in her town to use as they need. She was able to triple her income. She was able to achieve an income triple the average of that in her country. She was able to buy HIV medicine and send 2 of her children to school. But these are just 3 examples of the hundreds of entrepreneurs that microcredit helps. Microcredit works because it's based on sound economic principles. It demonstrates that all people, regardless of their social strata or education, are able to maximize the outputs of limited resources. Critics say otherwise, and they point to India as an example. The New York Times reported in 2010 that the Indian microcredit sector was on the verge of collapse, which was egged on by the politicians who accused the lenders, microcredit lenders, of becoming rich off the backs of the poor. Politicians in India sparked massive waves of criticism towards microcredit. They accused loaners of forcefully indebting the poor and placing high interest rates on them. But this is just not accurate. As I've said earlier, lenders boast high debt repayments of up to 97%. And it does not make sense to say that those loaners simply wanted to get rich off the backs of the poor with these high interest rates, because these poor people didn't have any money to begin with. High interest rates for those loans pay for the risk of loaning them. Plus, as Ulrich Vogelsson reported in his research of microcredit in Bolivia, these interest rates are up to 40% less than those that microcredit loaners can get by non-microcredit lenders. The stress in the Indian microcredit market was simply due to political tension and not to the market itself. Microcredit remains the answer. However, it's inaccurate to call it a solution, simply because there is no solution to poverty. As long as there exists people who are unwilling to better themselves in their situation, there will be poverty. However, there are people who are willing to pull themselves out of poverty, as seen evident in Sudha, Charity, and Marie Claire. These are people who were trapped by the poverty cycle and were set free by access to capital that they did not have before. These people will remain relatively poor. We know this, but they're developing. They are providing a future for their children, and someday they might even provide jobs. But the best part, they're doing it themselves. Microcredit aims at discovering entrepreneurs because, after all, if you teach somebody to fish, they'll eat for a lifetime. Thank you.